welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today we're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite from January 24th, 2023. Alright, so before we get into the show, we got one note I want to get into. Let's talk about Takeshita. Konosuke Takeshita, a young man from Japan, probably one of the nicest guys of all time. Got offended by Ric Flair, but took it in a way that would to impress anyone. Let's put it like that. So Ric Flair said that, quote, the Japanese young man that was chopping Danielson while he was on his knees the other night. Come on, those chops couldn't break an egg. And normally, especially an AEW wrestler, would be offended by that comment. But Takeshita said this, and this made me respect him a lot. He says, quote, I have the utmost respect for Ric Flair. It is incredible to me that he mentioned me. I need to practice a lot as I haven't done much chopping in Japan. Thanks for the advice. I would like you to actually teach me if possible. Watch my chops grow from now on. Amazing. Almost just the amount of humility that came through this tweet is charming. Like, this is all it takes. I am on this kid's side now. Ric Flair is an asshole. All right? Ric Flair did not need to go after the kid the way he did. It wasn't necessary to talk about how bad the kid's chops was. It wasn't necessary. But I love the maturity of Takeshita's response. I am a big fan of this guy now. He's the nicest guy of all time. I can't even tell you I would have been as nice. But Ric Flair just has a history of doing this kind of stuff. Just making these comments. And look, he's one of the greatest of all time. And the chop is one of his things. Of course, he's going to criticize that. I'm not surprised by that. But to be, somewhat brutal to a young guy who's, new to the country and, it's a different style, because maybe in Japan he would have hit him a little bit harder. But in America, you don't hit as hard. I mean, that's just a normal thing. And so one of those Japanese American things where wrestling is a lot more physical in Japan. And when they come to the United States, the Japanese wrestlers pull back quite a bit. And their matches aren't as physical or as intense. It's just one of the things that they do. They have to adapt. Adapt. That was the word I was looking for. Have to adapt. And I'm rooting for the kid. Go to Takeshita. As long as they have to do something with him to make him interesting. But generally speaking, I like him as a person. All right, let's get into this Jay Briscoe tribute show, which wasn't really a Jay Briscoe tribute show as much as it was a Jay Briscoe tribute match. And I guess we might as well go. And since that match was kind of non-canon to the rest of the show, we could just talk about that right now. So, Warner Brothers Discovery, up until, I don't know, maybe midday, late Tuesday, was still holding tight to their ban on the Briscoes being on their network. People continue to act fool online. People continue to talk terribly about Power Slap and how, they continue to do business with Dana White. And this kind of stuff, calling them hypocrites, and they were really trending for negative reasons. Then, of course, the sense actually started to get made that, Mark Briscoe wasn't even the one that made the comments in question. So they wanted to have a Jay Briscoe tribute match, but Warner Brothers was still refusing to allow the Briscoes to be shown on the network. So whatever Tony Khan did, he worked his Tony Khan magic, which means he probably went over somebody's head, called somebody's boss or something like that. Maybe his dad made a phone call. But Mark Briscoe was allowed to wrestle on Dynamite. And there was a short video package on the Briscoe family, which was, of course, the Pugh family, which also featured, his daughters who are still in the hospital with severe injuries from the car accident. As we push forward, there has been a lot of wrestling fans that have been very negative towards the driver who hit Jay's car. And I forget who it was that said this. I wish I could remember who it was so I can give them credit. But that woman, she had children too, you know, and her children are now without a mother because she did also die. So that's something to consider. While, it's just a human story. People screw up, whether she was drunk or high or texting or, whatever. She bent down to pick up an ink pen that she dropped and, lost control of the car, whatever the case may be. She had a family too. And it certainly wasn't malicious. It was just an accident. And I can understand people being very passionate and upset about it, but have to consider she has, family as well who, they lost her. And just because he's famous doesn't mean his life is worth more. Again, it wasn't malicious, but I can understand why you would be upset. People have to be told, even adults, to maintain proper emotions and maintain proper perspective. Like, yeah, it's okay to be upset by that situation, but you have to remember she also has a family. And so when you dumping all that negativity on her, or, you're tweeting out horrible things about her without knowing the situation, and we still don't know what caused the accident, just take into account, Jay Briscoe's children are still in the hospital. And that woman lost, that woman's family lost her. So just something to consider. Okay. So the tribute to the Pugh family or the Briscoes was very tasteful, very well done. It was also pretty short, but the official Jay Briscoe tribute show will be 3 hours from what I was told. Tony Khan is going to knit together matches that he taped the previous week with some classic Briscoe matches to create a 3-hour show that will be released for free. That ought to be interesting, because I'm pretty sure it's going to feature promos and different things like that where people get to say goodbye in a more formal sense. So that probably would be the official tribute show. I'm not one for rating or reviewing matches that are memorial matches because they exist for a different reason. But I did enjoy Mark Briscoe versus Jay Lethal. Mark Briscoe is underrated. I always used to joke and say he's like one of the bushwhackers, which he still does, But he was very accomplished. He was also quite good in Ring of Honor. Jay Lethal was, I think they billed him as being the best friend of Jay Briscoe. They worked together for 20 years in ROH. There's no doubt that these guys knew each other and were really good friends. Jay Lethal, he was very emotional throughout this whole thing, even from the beginning. He was emotional on the ramp. He was emotional mid-match, and he was emotional at the end. A great amount of professionalism to Jay Lethal for pushing through it. Because, what he's being asked to do is very difficult. Same thing for Mark, of course, considering that his literal brother. But Jay Lethal's being asked to perform. They're both being asked to perform, in memorial for somebody that they loved. So, whether you enjoyed it or not, neither here nor there. It's a memorial match. Okay, so another nice little touch was AEW's locker room coming up to the ramp. And, it was a lot of guys from Ring of Honor, Adam Cole, Samoa Joe, those guys. At least I think it was Samoa Joe was up there. There were probably some other Ring of Honor guys that was on the stage. It was all very tasteful and it was very well done. So the Jay Briscoe bits were quite good. I can't wait for this 3-hour show. I know the lineup that they put together. I'm not thrilled about that because I saw some of the matchups and was like, ooh. But I think from a memorial standpoint, it ought to still be very good if, there's promos and different things like that. Now let's get into the rest of the show, which I can and will criticize. How about that? Match 1, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Action Andretti and Ricky Starks. So Sammy Guevara actually pins Action Andretti to win the match. So big push for Action Andretti. How about that? Action Andretti is like the fourth member of Top Flight. I mean, it's just crazy athletic, no charisma, no character, no personality, no promo skills. Just he can do good jumps. Like somebody posted a video of Action Andretti doing something off of the shoulders of some big guy. Like he just climbed up the guy and flipped off his shoulders. And I was just thinking, like, what was that? If you saw that tweet, you probably already know what I'm talking about. Where I asked, like, is this an attack or is it defense? Like, what really is the point of that? But if you look at Action Andretti, the way he throws his strikes, the way he throws jump kicks, spinning back kicks, it's all just run of the mill off. You saw, if you watch Buddy Matthews on this show, you saw like 90% of the same stuff this guy already did in this match. You know, that's the thing about moves, right? He didn't have the charisma or the character to really get over anything, so he just got moves. So I'm just looking at his moves. I can see his moves in other people. You know, I see bits of Top Flight, and I see bits of Buddy Matthews. I see bits of Kenny Omega. I see bits of everybody. That's why you're supposed to cover all that up with your own charisma, your own spin on it, your own character. Again, it makes no sense to even push this guy because he had no personality. Whatever. Ricky Starks had a nice little sit-out powerbomb on Chris Jericho, though. I did like that. As he countered Jericho's code breaker. I thought that was very good. Kind of surprised Sammy Guevara won, you know, but now Action Andretti's about to get caught in the Sammy Guevara vortex where they're going to have a bunch of jumpy jump matches with no charisma, no personality or anything. And everybody's going to act like they're the best matches of all time. And I'm going to go wash dishes or mop the floor or literally do anything, wash my hair or literally anything else. I mean, well, I literally have other things to do in my life. All right. Speaking of which, second match, TNT Championship match, Darby Allin versus Buddy Matthews. The match was fairly solid. Buddy Matthews was literally pulled from the ether to be an opponent for Darby Allin. This match there was a lot of commercials in this match. And in the early part of the match, during, I think, the entrances, in the picture-in-picture, they were showing the storyline, or not really the storyline, because there's no storyline, the history of Darby Allin versus the House of Black. So that was a nice little touch. Wish we could have got that on TV, but whatever. At one point, the House of Black just appeared at ringside, because that's what they do. They disappear and reappear at will. So at that point, Ortiz and Sting both had bats and weapons and chased off Malachi Black and Brody King. Amazing. Here's the thing. I was watching Royal Rumble 2019. I just watched the Royal Rumble matches. The women's match, no good. The men's match, also no good. But here's the interesting thing. When Aleister Black's music hit at Royal Rumble 2019, you thought he was something special. You know, it's really hard to, when people look at that era of NXT, you know, the Aleister Blacks, the Andrades, the Keith Lees, and they're going to ask, where did those guys go? And, you know, I call it WWE's lost generation, when they had that era between 2002 to 2007, thereabouts, where they had Lashley, Umaga, MVP, Carlito, Chris Masters, it was somebody else, Mr. Kennedy. They had all of these guys, and these guys seemed like they were on the verge of being the next big star. Each one of them had the ability to be the next guy, and none of them made it. like literally by 2009 or 2010, most of them were gone. Lashley was gone. Carlito was still hanging around for a little while, but had been depushed. Umaga gone and passed away. Lashley, I already said Lashley. MVP ended up leaving. It got sad. Like that entire generation, that entire crop of talent just vanished. And it put WWE in a hole for like 2 or 3 years. In some cases, it put them in a hole they never really got out of. And now I'm thinking they have another lost generation with that last era of NXT, that 2015 to 2019 era, where that featured Andrade and Aleister Black and Keith Lee and, all the women, Shayna Baszler and Kairi Sane and Io Shirai and Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox and all of them. And none of them are going anywhere. Most of them got fired. Then they may have gotten rehired and they populate the lower mid card right now. But Aleister Black was one of those guys where you just kind of figured, it's only a matter of time for him. Right environment with somebody who actually understands him and understands his character and understands what he's trying to do. He's going to be the one. Out of all of those guys, there was three that I felt like you couldn't really miss with them. One was Karrion Kross, two was Keith Lee, three was Aleister Black. I figured if nobody else was going to make it, Adam Cole, okay, he's tiny with no muscle definition. The same thing could be said for Johnny Gargano. And while Tommaso Ciampa has muscle definition, he's also tiny and injury prone. I understand why they wouldn't make it. But, you would think that those three guys would have been can't miss. But then Keith Lee ballooned in weight, had a bad attitude. And if you say, well, he didn't have a bad attitude. Look, he's still, not doing the best in AEW. And as a matter of fact, when the last time you saw Keith Lee on TV in AEW? 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago? Chris Jericho did an interview where he was talking about Swerve being a big draw for AEW. Even though Swerve's segments usually feature celebrities, which are the draw. Neither here nor there. But Swerve ain't been on TV in a month. Thereabout. Has Swerve been on AEW TV in 2023? If so, it's probably early. So the NXT generation that featured Swerve and Santos Escobar and Gunther, who seems to might be the only guy who's going to break out of that thing and actually become something. Pete Dunne and all these guys are going nowhere fast. I thought Riddle might have been in a higher position than he is now, but it ain't working out for him either. If he's getting into all kinds of trouble, it ain't working out for him either. So it's sad to see that this is what Malachi Aleister Black has been falling into, is being a really, really low mid-card act, a Rampage only act for AEW. That's sad, man. Because people were and I remember we had this conversation literally earlier today about WWE fumbling Keith Lee. And it's like, well, Keith Lee got a big push right out of the gate. The Survivor Series thing with Roman, the match with, the Royal Rumble match, where he got the square up with Brock, and he beat Randy Orton in his first pay-per-view match. And then he spent a ridiculous amount of time in the hospital, came back bigger than ever. Then they decided to give up on him and made him Bearcat and screwed him over and then fired him. So, it started out strong. It started out with all the best intentions, but then it swung in the other direction. Maybe one day we'll get the full story, but not right now. But you would think Keith Lee and Aleister Black, who were two guys that people pissed and moaned and whined about, when they finally got to AEW, you see that it's just fickle fans who don't care, because you should be bitching that Malachi Black is not a bigger star. You should be pissed that Malachi Black isn't a champion or in championship contention in AEW. He's one of the furthest away from championship contention. He's a Rampage only wrestler. That's stupid. It's dumb. That's like if, he did nothing but wrestle on Main Event in WWE. People would complain, they would bitch, and they would whine and say he was wasting his time and wasting his talent. This guy's almost 40. And that's the case for a lot of these people in this new lost generation that WWE has. Keith Lee is almost 40. Adam Cole is on the young side. Tommaso Ciampa is almost 40. A lot of those people are in their mid 30s. Santos Escobar is almost 40, if he's not already 40. You know, Karrion Kross is almost 40. So you can understand at least that Vince maybe wanted to go younger. He didn't want to feature some of these older talents, but for Christ's sake, even AEW's not doing anything with them. Anyway, Buddy Matthews lost. Who cares? Match was solid enough, though. Samoa Joe interrupted Darby Allin's celebratory promo, thank God, by calling him young champion. And then calling him a thief, saying he stole that title. That he, Samoa Joe, is the one true king of television. And that winning that championship from him was the biggest mistake of Darby Allin's career. I was like, okay, I love Samoa Joe, but kind of lacks punch when this kid basically just broke out of his finisher. I mean, I'm never going to be able to get out of that. I think it was Dave Shearer who called Darby Allin Road Warrior Darby for how he got out of that finish. Oh, shit. He pulled a Tatanka out of that joint. just stop. Forget it, huh? Oh, God. Speaking of Adam Cole, they're still doing Adam Cole comeback vignettes. This one wasn't very interesting because it told us nothing. Just that he's working hard to become a new version of himself. Didn't mention anything about him coming back anytime soon. Just says that he's been taking one step forward, 2 steps back in his recovery, but he's going to keep fighting back and he'll be back soon. All right. It seems like they're trying to capture the same energy as the Cody Rhodes vignettes, but it's AEW, so it's not the same. Okay, they're trying though. Give them a B for effort. All right, Matt Hardy and Ethan Page versus Jungle Hook. I swear to God, I had something else to do. I heard the Hardy Boys theme. I heard the pop, and I looked because I was like, "Is that Jeff?" Because if this is Jeff, man, oh boy. And then I saw Matt, and I was like, "Oh no!" And then I saw Ethan Page, and I was like, "Oh no!" Oh, Then you had the black kid where Private Party was there, and him and Stokely was doing some kind of gimmick, and Ethan Page was yelling about not playing Matt Hardy's music, play his music. I was like, I don't care about this. I don't care about this at all. I know Jungle Hook won, but I didn't sit and watch this. Ethan Page and Matt Hardy in the year of our Lord 2023. They must think that you're a lonely incel to put this on TV and think you're going to sit and watch it. I ain't watched that shit. Moving on. The Acclaimed Guns family therapy session. This was actually good. So the Guns got called spoiled brats by their daddy. The Guns says that how could he criticize how they were raised? Because he was always on the road. He was never around. The Acclaimed called them jealous because they started getting the attention that the Guns wish they would have had. And that the Guns had years and years to make up that time. So Billy Gunn being on the road was no excuse. The Guns took credit for the Acclaim's success, saying that they had the Acclaim's back when Anthony Bowens was injured. They were the ones who basically did whatever was possible to... They didn't say it in these terms, but basically the Guns said they were the ones who got the Acclaimed over. Billy Gunn tried to argue with them, and the Gunn boys said, our faults as sons are your faults, failures as a father, which I know hurt Billy Gunn to his core. But this was a solid segment. It was short. A lot of the normal WWE fluff was cut out. It was back and forth. It felt really earnest. I like this. It wasn't kooky and silly. It felt like they were really saying things that they felt. So that's a positive. All right. Hangman Page is hanging out with Renee Paquette once again. He says that him and Moxley are 1-1. And since they're going to be in Ohio next week, he wants to knock him out in Ohio. He wants to knock out Jon Moxley in Ohio. Renee is just kind of standing there not really selling this at all, and it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. You know, you want to knock my husband out? Okay, sure. So Wheeler Yuta, guys, built like a Pringles can, for Christ's sake, just no body definition whatsoever. Anyway, Wheeler Yuta comes out there and he's offended on Moxley's behalf, but he accepted the challenge on Moxley's behalf. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know he'll accept you, he'll fight you. It's like he's not medically cleared. So Moxley, who's not medically cleared, that's the bone of contention here. Yuta says, well, you're big mouth to try to challenge a guy who's not medically cleared. I'll fight you. And then Hangman Page like, okay, I'll fight you, I guess. So, of course, from there, it became quote-unquote official. How is it official when one guy's not medically cleared? But whatever. Hangman Page versus Moxley, and apparently it's going to be a regular match next week. Whatever. I don't care. Bryan Danielson defeated Brian Cage in a singles match on this show, with Brian Cage targeting the arm and shoulder of Danielson. After the match, MJF and Brian Cage jumped Danielson to try to take him out. Takeshita made the save. Okay. After the match, Danielson was being examined by a medical professional who said that it's not looking good, and he does not suggest that Danielson wrestle. Danielson said, nope, he's going to do what he wants to do. Nobody's going to stop him from wrestling. And that at Revolution, he is going to expose MJF as a fraud. He was very passionate, and he really meant this, and that's a positive. I like when, Danielson really turns it on. But I'm telling you, that Brian Cage, boy, that man's dull as dishwater. I don't know. Dude, boy. You could sell that look in a can. Really. The guy looks like he'll draw you $1 million. But then you realize he just has zero personality. Just none. So, MJF cut a promo later saying that people can't control their emotions when he's around. He made some Hitler joke about not being the only Jew that's, has a man with blue eyes obsessed with him. Then he said that Takeshita is smooth-brained and that there's going to be consequences if he keeps getting in his business. Then he claimed that Danielson is obsessed with him and obsessed with that title. And the title is the reason MJF gets out of bed. It makes his catchphrase a fact. He is better than Danielson, and he knows it. Then he says that Tony Khan let it be known that there was an open contract for the match with Danielson next week. And MJF picked it up, and his opponent is going to be Timothy Thatcher. Thatch Can, Timothy Thatcher from NXT. I like Timothy Thatcher. He is the kind of grizzled vet that, is really good for this product. I think he actually fits into AEW because he has the indie sort of look. He works a very ground-heavy style, of very, mean-spirited, physical in-ring worker. I could just see Thatcher getting in there like Claudio. And they could just have some real bangers between the two of them. He'd be a perfect sort of coach and in-ring talent. I like Thatcher. He doesn't, he has a unique kind of intense charisma. Where like Benoit, that intensity it makes up for the lack of being able to talk, where you can just watch a guy like, okay, he's a killer. Like you might meet him in prison. He might, dig his thumbs into your eyeballs or something like that. There's something unique about that. I like that. So Thatcher versus Danielson. Okay. Hopefully Thatcher sticks around for a little while. He's probably going to end up on Rampage perpetually, but hopefully he sticks around for a while. All right. So Toni Storm wrestles Ruby Soho, and they both have promos before the match. Toni Storm promo was getting stepped on by her music, which her soft voice and lack of actual punch to anything she had to say didn't really, make much of a difference. But the gist of it was, what is Ruby Soho thinking, helping out the homegrown talent? She's an idiot. She should realize where she comes from. While Ruby Soho was saying that she came to AEW, should be taken seriously. She's fought with these girls. She's bled with them. This is the best company with the best women's division. And that, why was Tony be upset about the AEW originals? Everybody has to start somewhere, and Tony's arrogance is going to end with her. So they go out there and they have an oof match. It was just oof. Tony she looked very weird. Her behavior was a little off. Like, Tony was actually playing to the crowd tonight, which I said literally like 2 weeks ago. Like, Tony Storm completely ignores the crowd. Now she's actually playing to the crowd. And I was like, okay, cool. Finally. There is some growth. I got to give her thumbs up on the growth. Ruby Soho wins because Britt Baker came out there to distract Toni Storm, and a real WWE style finish. So I'm guessing that was the point. Since Toni Storm is supposed to be representing the new breed, I don't know what you're calling it, but they decided to pull a WWE finish where all Britt Baker did was her music played and she came out on the ramp. That distracted Toni enough for Ruby Soho to hit her finish and win. Okay. I would imagine that this is just a ruse and that Ruby Soho is eventually going to join Toni Storm and Saraya's team. I would think so. I would hope so. But they didn't do much building of this concept tonight. They just had Ruby Soho versus Toni Storm. Okay. All right. So that's Dynamite in a nutshell, to be quite honest, guys. Nothing special. The Mark Briscoe, Jay Lethal match was emotional for a reason. The best thing on the show, really. The TNT title match, I guess, was good. You can't pay me to enjoy a Brian Cage match, so that's out. And Matt Hardy and that other guy, you could kick rocks on that. The only way I'll watch that match is if I get paid. That would be it, Otherwise, I'm not watching fucking Ethan Page and Matt Hardy team up. I don't want to see Matt Hardy. Not in 2023, man. It's shameful. It's shameful. But what did you guys think of Dynamite? To me, just another meh version of Dynamite. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for your time. Be blessed, and I'll talk to you guys later.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, daddy.